The massive chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of gleaming metal and crystal, filled with the desperate voices of 47 different alien species. Emergency lights cast red shadows across the curved walls where holographic displays showed the same terrifying truth over and over again. 3 entire sectors of space had turned red on the galactic map. Red meant gone. Red meant dead. Ambassador Veltar stood at the center of the Great Hall, his body made of living crystal that normally sparkled with beautiful blue light. Today the crystal looked dull and gray, reflecting his fear. Around him, creatures of every imaginable shape whispered in languages that sounded like music, static or grinding metal, but they all said the same thing. They were losing the war. The Krexian Empire had appeared like a nightmare from the dark corners of space 6 months ago. Nobody knew where they came from, or why they wanted to destroy everything they touched. What everyone knew was that their weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Krexians used something called bioweapons, tools of war that could turn living flesh into gray soup and metal into dust in minutes. Veltar raised his arm and the chamber fell silent. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of worlds. The Krexian fleet took the Zephyr system yesterday. Admiral Throck's entire battle group is gone. 200 ships, 50,000 lives. They lasted less than an hour. A wave of fear rippled through the gathered aliens. Some made sounds like crying. Others clicked or buzzed in what could only be panic. The displays around the chamber showed video footage from the battle. Proud warships that had protected the galaxy for centuries simply melted when the Krexian weapons touched them. Soldiers in advanced armor fell down and never got up again. Elder Thosakan of the Vortan people slowly stood up on his 4 legs. He was older than most civilizations, his 6 arms moving slowly as he spoke. We have tried everything. Our best scientists cannot understand their weapons. Our strongest shields cannot stop them. Our fastest ships cannot escape them. Commander Zixal of the Centauri Defense Force slammed one of his claws against his chair. Then we fight harder. We build bigger guns. We make more ships. With what? Veltar's crystal body flickered with angry light. They destroyed our shipyards. They poisoned our factory worlds. Half our species cannot even breathe the air on planets they have touched. The truth hung in the air like poison. The Krexians did not just want to conquer. They wanted to wipe out every other form of life in the galaxy. Their weapons were designed to kill not just soldiers, but entire planets. Men, women, children, even the smallest insects died when Krexian bioweapons were used. Elder Thosakan spoke again, his ancient voice barely above a whisper. There is one option we have not discussed. The chamber went completely silent. Even the translation computers seemed to pause. The quarantined world, Sol 3, the humans. The reaction was immediate and loud. Angry voices rose in dozens of languages. Some aliens laughed, a sound like breaking glass or grinding stone. Others made noises that clearly meant absolutely not in any language. Ambassador Veltar's crystal body turned bright red with shock. The humans were isolated for good reasons, Elder. They are too violent, too dangerous to themselves and others. They fight wars against their own species, added Commander Zixal. They poison their own air and water. They build weapons that can destroy their entire planet. They are primitive, shouted another voice. They barely have space travel. Elder Thosakan waited for the noise to die down. When he spoke, his words were carefully chosen. Yes, they are violent. Yes, they are dangerous. But they are also the only species in our records that has survived planet-wide biological warfare, multiple times, against themselves. The chamber fell silent again. The weight of those words sank in slowly. Every species in the galaxy had heard stories about the humans of Sol 3. They were the species that had been locked away behind energy barriers centuries ago because they were too unpredictable to be allowed into galactic society. They fought wars with weapons that could kill millions. They had diseases that could wipe out entire continents. They had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and their own terrible mistakes. Most importantly, They had survived biological weapons that they had created to use against each other. Veltar's crystal body slowly changed from red to a pale yellow, the color of deep thought. You are suggesting we contact a species that was quarantined specifically because they were too dangerous to be trusted with advanced technology. I am suggesting, Elder Thosukan replied, that we contact the only species we know that might understand how to fight the kind of war the Krexians are waging. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species threatened to leave the council if humans were contacted. Others argued that extinction was better than asking for help from such dangerous creatures. But as the reports came in of more worlds falling to Krexian bioweapons, even the most reluctant voices grew quiet. The final vote was close. 24 species voted yes, 23 voted no. 1 abstained. In their desperation, the greatest civilizations in the galaxy had decided to wake up the monsters they had locked away centuries ago. The distress beacon to Sol would be sent immediately. Admiral Kim Tae-ho was drinking his morning coffee in his private quarters aboard the UEDF Incheon when the communication alert began flashing red on his desk. He set down his cup and activated the secure channel, expecting another routine patrol report from the outer system. Instead, 17 different alien languages filled his speakers at once, all saying the same thing in voices that carried pure desperation. The translation computer worked quickly, sorting through the mess of sounds until clear words appeared on his screen. Please help us. We are dying. Our worlds are burning. We have nowhere else to turn. Kim Tae-ho leaned back in his chair and read the full message twice. The Galactic Council, the same organization that had locked humanity behind energy barriers, for 300 years was begging for help. They faced something called the Krexian Empire, an enemy that used biological weapons to destroy entire star systems. He pressed the comm button. Commander Park Ji-woo, report to my quarters immediately. Park Ji-woo arrived within minutes, still wearing her exercise clothes from the morning training session. She was young for a fleet commander, but Kim Tae-ho had learned to trust her. Quick thinking during their years serving together. Sir, what's the emergency? Kim handed her the translated message. As she read, her expression changed from curiosity to surprise to something that looked almost like excitement. They're asking us to fight a biological war? She asked. It appears so. The enemy is using weapons that dissolve organic matter and metal. Standard galactic technology cannot stop them. Park Ji-woo was quiet for a moment. Sir, this falls under Prometheus Protocol, doesn't it? Kim Tae-ho nodded slowly. Prometheus Protocol was a set of orders that had been written 50 years ago, when Earth's military leaders realized that someday the galaxy might need humanity's unique talents. The protocol gave fleet commanders full authority to respond to extinction-level biological threats without waiting for approval from Earth Command. Prepare the Third Fleet for immediate departure. Contact Captain Lee Soo-jin on the Sol and tell her to bring her special operations teams. Also, wake up Dr. Choi Min-ho and his research staff. All of them, sir. All of them. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. 3 days later, the human fleet appeared at the coordinates the Galactic Council had provided. 12 ships that looked primitive compared to the sleek alien vessels already waiting there. The human ships were gray and angular, covered with armor plating and weapon systems that seemed crude by galactic standards. The aliens had been waiting nervously for hours. When the human ships arrived, they immediately opened communication channels, eager to meet their potential saviors. Admiral Kim Tae-ho appeared as a hologram in the Council's emergency chamber. He wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations except his rank insignia. Compared to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor of the alien representatives, he looked almost ordinary. I am Admiral Kim Tae-ho of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call. Ambassador Veltar stepped forward, his crystal body flickering with nervous energy. Admiral, we are grateful that you responded so quickly. We must warn you, however, that the Krexian threat is unlike anything our civilizations have faced before. Tell me about their weapons. For the next 2 hours, the aliens explained everything they knew about the Krexian bioweapons. They showed video footage of proud warships dissolving like sugar in water, They displayed medical records of soldiers whose bodies had been turned to liquid by invisible pathogens. They shared reports of entire planets where nothing lived anymore, not even bacteria. Admiral Kim listened without speaking. His face showed no emotion as he watched civilizations die on the holographic displays. When the presentation ended, the chamber was silent except for the quiet hum of alien technology. "Do you have genetic samples of the Krexians?" Kim asked. Ambassador, Veltar looked confused. "We have some tissue samples recovered from their attacks, but our scientists cannot determine how to use them effectively." "Good. We'll need 48 hours to prepare our response. I suggest you evacuate all non-essential personnel from this sector." Elder Thoskan shifted nervously on his forelegs. "Admiral, may we ask what you are planning?" Kim Tae-ho was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, there was something in his voice that made the alien representatives step backward. "The Krexians think they understand biological warfare because they can make weapons that kill everything they touch. But that's not biological warfare. That's just poison with extra steps." He paused, and for the first time since arriving, he smiled. It was not a friendly expression. Real biological warfare is precise, it's targeted. It's designed to destroy your enemy completely while leaving everything else untouched. The Krexians are using hammers when they should be using scalpels. "Commander." Park Ji-woo appeared beside him in the hologram. "Sir, Dr. Choi confirms that Krexian biology follows standard carbon-based patterns. Their genetic structure is actually quite vulnerable to targeted modification." "Excellent. Begin Phase 1 preparations immediately." The hologram flickered as Admiral Kim prepared to end the transmission. "Counselors, I want to be very clear about something. You called us because you need someone who can fight the kind of war the Krexians are waging. We can do that. But once we begin, there will be no stopping until the threat is completely eliminated." The transmission ended, leaving the alien representatives alone with their growing fear. They had asked for soldiers. They were beginning to realize they had summoned something much more dangerous. Captain Lee Soo-jin walked through the sterile corridors of the UEDF Seoul, her boots clicking against the metal floor. The ship's biological research section was deep in the lower decks, behind 3 layers of security doors and air filtration systems. When she reached the main laboratory, she found Dr. Choi Min-ho hunched over a microscope, completely absorbed in his work. "Doctor, how much longer do you need?" she asked. Dr. Choi looked up, his eyes red from hours of research. "The Krexian genetic structure is actually quite simple, much simpler than human DNA. It's almost like they never had to evolve defenses against biological attacks." Lee Soo-jin pulled up a chair beside him. Around them, dozens of other scientists worked at computer terminals and laboratory equipment. The room hummed with quiet activity, as humanity's best biological researchers did what they did best. "Show me what you found." Dr. Choi activated a holographic display that showed the complex structure of Krexian DNA. "Look at this. Their immune system is designed to fight off simple infections and toxins, but they have no natural defenses against engineered pathogens. It's like they've never faced biological warfare before. That's good for us. Better than good. Watch this." Dr. Choi manipulated the display to show a computer simulation. "If we introduce a modified virus here, it attacks their nervous system. They lose motor control within hours and die within days. But the beautiful part is that it only affects Krexians. Human DNA is too different for the virus to recognize." Lee Soo-jin studied the simulation. She had seen many weapons in her 20 years of military service, but biological weapons were special. They were invisible, silent, and absolutely deadly when used correctly. "What else can we do?" Dr. Choi's smile was not pleasant. "I've designed 17 different attack vectors. The first wave targets their nervous systems. The second wave attacks their digestive tract, making it impossible for them to process food. The third wave destroys their immune system completely." He switched to another display showing more simulations. "The fourth wave makes them unable to reproduce. The fifth wave is airborne and can survive in space for over a month. The sixth wave turns their own body chemistry against them." Lee Soo-jin watched the simulations play out, Each one showed Krexian biology being systematically destroyed by human-engineered weapons. How long will it take? If we deploy all 17 weapons in sequence, the Krexian Empire will be extinct within 6 weeks. The word extinct hung in the air like a weight. Li Su-jin had killed many enemies in her career, but she had never been part of wiping out an entire species before. Doctor, are you certain these weapons will only affect Krexians? Absolutely. I've tested them against samples from 47 different species. The weapons are so specifically designed that they won't even affect Krexian bacteria. Only Krexians themselves. Lieutenant Park Hye-jin entered the laboratory carrying a datapad. Captain, Admiral Kim wants to know if we're ready to begin Phase 1. Li Su-jin looked around the laboratory. Her team of specialists had worked for 2 days straight, creating weapons that most civilized species would consider impossible, but humans had been fighting biological wars against each other for thousands of years. They knew how to make diseases that could kill precisely what they wanted to kill. What's our delivery method? She asked Dr. Choi. Small drones, each one carrying enough pathogen to infect an entire planet. The drones are designed to look like space debris. The Krexians will never see them coming. And once the weapons are deployed, Dr. Choi pulled up another simulation. The first symptoms will appear within 12 hours. By the end of the first week, the Krexian military will be unable to fight effectively. By the end of the second week, their entire civilization will be collapsing. Lieutenant Park looked uncomfortable. Sir, what if they try to surrender? Li Su-jin was quiet for a moment. She thought about the videos the aliens had shown them. Entire worlds where nothing lived anymore. Children who had died because they breathed air that Krexian weapons had poisoned. Civilizations that had existed for thousands of years wiped out in hours. The Krexians chose to fight a war of extinction, she said finally. They used weapons designed to kill every living thing they encountered. They showed no mercy to anyone. She stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. Somewhere, out there, the Krexian Empire was preparing to destroy more worlds. We're going to give them exactly what they gave others, but we're going to do it better than they ever could. Dr. Choi saved his work and began shutting down the laboratory equipment. Captain, I need you to understand something. Once we release these weapons, there will be no way to stop them. The Krexians will die, all of them. I understand, Doctor. Do you? Because I've created something that makes their bioweapons look like toys. When this is over, the Krexians won't just be defeated. They won't exist anymore. Li Su-jin turned back to face her team. Prepare the drones for deployment. Contact Admiral Kim and tell him Phase 1 is ready to begin. As her team began loading the deadly cargo into the small invisible drones, Li Su-jin felt a cold satisfaction. The Krexians had wanted to show the galaxy what biological warfare looked like. Now humanity was going to show them what it really meant. The attack began on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time, though the Krexians never saw it coming. 50 small drones, each no bigger than a human fist, drifted silently through space toward the heart of the Krexian Empire. They looked like ordinary space debris, the kind of metal scraps that floated between star systems after old battles. Admiral Krexian stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, reviewing plans for the next planetary assault. His species was proud of their efficiency. In 6 months, they had wiped out more civilizations than most empires conquered in centuries. Their bioweapons were perfect tools of destruction, turning living worlds into silent graveyards. His aide, Commander Vextar, approached with the daily reports. Admiral, our scouts report no resistance in the next 3 systems. We should be able to sterilize them within the week. Krexian nodded with satisfaction. The word sterilize was not metaphorical in Krexian military language. When they finished with a world, absolutely nothing remained alive. Not plants, not animals, not even the smallest microorganisms. It was clean, efficient, and permanent. Excellent. Deploy the advanced bioweapon platforms. I want those worlds prepared for colonization within... Commander Vextar suddenly doubled over, gray foam spilling from his breathing apparatus. He tried to speak but only made choking sounds before collapsing on the metal floor. Krexian stepped backward in shock. Medical team to the bridge immediately. But before the medical team could arrive, 2 more officers fell down, their bodies convulsing. Within minutes, half the bridge crew was on the floor, struggling to breathe through the gray foam that poured from their mouths. Similar scenes were playing out across the Krexian fleet. On 17 different ships, crew members were collapsing, without warning. The symptoms were identical: difficulty breathing, loss of motor control, and the strange gray foam that seemed to come from nowhere. The Krexian medical officers were baffled. Their scanners detected no toxins in the air. Their bioweapon detectors showed nothing unusual. Whatever was happening seemed to be coming from inside their own bodies. Within 6 hours, 7 Krexian warships had gone completely silent. Their crews were either dead or too sick to respond to communications. The remaining ships tried to maintain formation, but it was becoming clear that something terrible was happening. Krexian, who had somehow avoided the worst of the symptoms, gathered his surviving officers in the ship's medical bay. "What is our status?" The chief medical officer, Dr. Hexwan, looked exhausted. "Admiral, we've lost 60% of our personnel across the fleet. The symptoms appear to be some kind of rapid-onset neurological disorder, but I cannot identify the cause. Is it contagious? I don't know. It doesn't follow any pattern of biological contamination I've ever seen." As they spoke, Dr. Hexwan suddenly grabbed his throat and fell backward. Gray foam began pouring from his breathing apparatus as his body went into convulsions. Krexian realized with growing horror that his mighty fleet was being destroyed by an invisible enemy. He opened a communication channel to the human vessels that were maintaining their position several light hours away. "Human Admiral Kim Taeho, this is Admiral Krexian of the Krexian Imperial Fleet. We need to discuss terms." The response came immediately. Admiral Kim's voice was calm and professional. "No. Please, we are willing to negotiate." "No." The communication channel went dead. 3 days later, the second wave began. Krexian food supplies started killing anyone who consumed them. Water recycling systems became sources of contamination instead of purification. Even the emergency rations that had been sealed for years became deadly poison. The few surviving Krexians quickly realized they could not eat anything or drink anything without risking death. Their own bodies were turning against them, unable to process even the simplest nutrients. Krexian, now one of the few officers still alive on his ship, tried again to contact the humans. "Please, we surrender. We will leave the sector immediately. We will never return." Admiral Kim's response was the same single word: "No." By the end of the first week, the Krexian Empire's military was no longer capable of any offensive action. Ships drifted powerless through space, their crews either dead or dying. The few survivors were too weak to operate their weapons or maintain their vessels, but the humans were not finished. The third wave was different from the first two. Instead of attacking specific biological systems, it was designed to be absolutely permanent. Krexians who had somehow survived the first 2 attacks found that their reproductive systems were shutting down. The weapons had been engineered to ensure that even if some Krexians lived, they would be the last generation of their species. The fourth wave was airborne and designed to remain active in the vacuum of space for over 30 days. It spread from ship to ship, carried by the tiniest particles that drifted between vessels. The fifth wave attacked their genetic structure directly, rewriting their DNA to make their own bodies produce toxins. By the end of the 6th week, the Krexian Empire had ceased to exist. Not defeated, not conquered, but completely extinct. The few scattered survivors were dying slowly, their bodies failing as the human-engineered weapons continued their work. The humans had taken a species that thought they understood biological warfare and shown them what extinction actually looked like. It was precise, efficient, and absolutely final. And 8 weeks after the first human drone had drifted silently toward Krexian space, the Galactic Council gathered again in their great chamber. This time the emergency lights were off. The red zones on their displays had disappeared. The threat that had terrified 47 civilizations was gone, but the victory celebration felt more like a funeral. Ambassador Veltar stood before the assembly, his crystal body reflecting a pale, uncertain light. The Krexian Empire no longer exists. Our long-range scouts report that their homeworlds are empty, completely lifeless. A murmur went through the chamber, but it was not the sound of joy. It was the sound of species that had seen something that would haunt their nightmares for generations to come. Elder Thosikan spoke slowly from his seat. How many Krexian survivors have we found? 17. All of them are dying. Our medical teams estimate they have less than a month to live. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. In 6 weeks, humanity had reduced an empire of billions to 17 dying refugees. No one in the chamber had imagined such complete destruction was possible. Admiral Kim Tae-ho appeared as a hologram at the center of the chamber. He looked exactly the same as he had 8 weeks ago, calm, professional, and somehow more dangerous than any weapon the Council had ever seen. "Counselors," he said with a polite nod. Ambassador Veltar stepped forward, his crystal form flickering nervously. "Admiral Kim, the galaxy owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. We had hoped this victory might mark the beginning of a new partnership between our peoples." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Admiral Kim replied. "Earth Command has decided to maintain our previous isolation status." The response shocked the assembled aliens. Commander Zixal of the Centauri Defense Force slammed his claw against his chair. "But surely you can see the benefits of joining galactic civilization. Together we could build a peace that lasts for centuries." Admiral Kim's expression didn't change. "Commander, you called us because you needed someone who could commit genocide efficiently and completely. That should tell you everything you need to know about why we prefer to remain isolated." The word genocide sent a chill through the chamber. It was a word that most civilized species only whispered, a concept so terrible that most languages had no proper translation for it. Elder Thosikan spoke carefully. "Admiral, was such complete destruction truly necessary? Could the Krexians not have been defeated without exterminating them entirely?" For the first time, Admiral Kim's calm expression changed slightly. Not to anger, but to something that looked almost like pity. "Elder, the Krexians developed weapons specifically designed to kill every living thing they encountered. Men, women, children, even bacteria and plants. They used these weapons without hesitation across 3 sectors of space. They chose the rules of engagement." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We simply played by those rules better than they did." Dr. Yelhan of the Vortan Science Council raised one of her forearms. "But Admiral, surely there were non-combatants among the Krexians, civilians who had no part in their military's actions." Admiral Kim's response was immediate and cold. "Doctor, when the Krexians attacked your colonies, did their weapons distinguish between soldiers and civilians? When they poisoned entire planets, did they spare the children?" The chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered the reports from the Krexian attacks. Entire worlds where nothing lived anymore. Not just the military targets, but schools, hospitals, even nurseries for alien young. "The Krexians wanted to fight a war of total extinction," Admiral Kim continued. "We gave them exactly what they asked for." Ambassador Veltar's crystal body began changing colors rapidly, a sign of extreme distress among his people. "Admiral, what you accomplished was incredible, but it was also terrifying. How do we know that humanity won't decide to treat other species the same way?" Admiral Kim smiled, and it was the same uncomfortable expression he had worn during their first meeting. "You don't. That's exactly why the quarantine around Sol will remain in place." The hologram began to flicker as he prepared to end the transmission. "I want to leave you with something to think about, counselors. You've spent centuries building a peaceful galactic civilization. You created laws, treaties, and customs designed to prevent the kind of war you just witnessed." He paused. "But when you faced a real threat, when your very existence was in danger, you threw away all those principles and called the one species you had locked away specifically because we were too violent to be trusted." The implications of his words slowly sank in. The great civilizations of the galaxy, with all their wisdom and moral superiority, had chosen to unleash humanity the moment their survival was threatened. "The next time you face an extinction-level threat," Admiral Kim said, "try diplomacy. First, try negotiation. Try anything except war. Because war is humanity's specialty, and as you've seen, we're very, very good at it." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in complete silence. As the alien representatives slowly filed out of the chamber, they began to understand the true nature of their mistake. They had expected to hire soldiers to fight their war instead. They had awakened something far more dangerous, a species that viewed total war not as a last resort, but as a science to be perfected. The quarantine around Sol wasn't meant to protect the galaxy from human expansion. It was meant to protect the galaxy from human solutions.